Welcome to the last video of Chapter 14. In this video, we're talking about the actual contact page and modifying and stylizing the form itself. Right now, if you take a look at the contact page, you notice that the form has a lot of information and it's not exactly the easiest thing to work with. So we're going to be stylizing this and working with the CSS to make it a little easier to run. So the first thing you want to do is take a moment to review the lines 36 through 78 in the contact page. Let's see, contact page 36, the form, and 78 down here, the closing of the form, and just take a look and see the information here. We have required fields, we have radio buttons, we have values, so we actually specify the information. We have minimums, we have numbers. Let's see, we have emails, comments, and a text area. Good. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our CSS right here. Good. And at the very bottom, add some new lines so we can actually see what we are doing. First thing is specify the label. We're going to actually see where the labels are and what they do. So border, red, solid 1px. Good. Save, refresh, and now you see that the labels on the form have a color that tells you what the actual spacing is around them. Just as a reminder, you have used a named color as a visual reminder that this is a temporary declaration. So while we're inside label, let's specify the width of 12 rem. Save, refresh, and well, nothing happened. But let's take a look. Why 12 rem? Well, specifically, that is just trial and error. We don't know exactly how big 12 rem is. So we're just going to change it and hopefully things work out and kind of narrow down exactly how wide we want them to be. An approximate height contains about 20 characters including the space. 12 is a little more than half of 20, so therefore we can kind of work this way. But one of the reasons why nothing worked, if you keep refreshing the page, is because, well, labels are inline elements. In inline elements, you cannot set a width or a height to. So to fix this, we can say display inline block. But before we do that, let's move this width down because we want our properties, our declarations, to be in alphabetic order, making it easier to work with. Save, refresh. Hey, look at that. 12 rem works perfectly, especially for the approximate weight. So this right here contains 20 characters. 12 is a little more than half of 20, so therefore it works out quite well. Good. Let's see. We're going to go back to the label, and we're going to make all the labels, including these right here, to have a right alignment. So we're going to say text align right. Save, refresh. And now, without the red borders, you can see that the text has aligned to the right, making it a little easier to work with. We're not done just yet, but now there is no gap between the label and the field except for the radio buttons, which we'll get to in a minute. Alright, return to brackets, click after the closing brace of the label rule, right here. I'm going to specify input, square brackets, type equals radio, spell radio rate, square brackets, plus label, because that is the adjoining one, display inline. Hey, look at that, our problem has been fixed. With the previous label, we set display of inline block. For any of the labels that are adjoining to radio buttons, we just have the display of inline. So that way the width does not get applied to those items. And we don't have to worry about modifying it or adding IDs or classes or anything else, because this takes care of it for us. Whew, all right. The labels next to the radio buttons are no longer have the honor the width setting. The radio buttons get a little closer together, but we do want to specify the actual space between the radio button and the label itself. So we're going to add a margin right of 1 rem. And what does that do? That means that the landline one spaces itself away from the mobile label. Good. It is now clear which label is associated with which radio button. The comment box is not top aligned with its label. Just as the table cell content, it would be easier to read if the label and the comment box were top aligned to each other. So, because the comment box itself, if you take a look at the code, is not just a comment box, it's actually a text area. So we do need to add a different rule and declaration for that. Text area, vertical, align, top. Did that do anything? Yes, it did. It specified the text area is going to be vertically aligned to the top of the element. Is this a table? Let's just check to make sure. This is not a table. Good. So what did it just get aligned to? Well, if you take a look at the actual text area, notice that there's not much here, but the text area itself has been aligned to the top. That way it makes it the same level as the text or as the label. Blech. Mainly because the labels have a display of inline block, so that way the text area gets aligned as well with the vertical align. Okay. The comment box and the label are top aligned to each other. Each line of the form field still but cramped vertically. Okay, so we're going to be modifying the input and specifying a margin bottom. So input, let's see, text area, input, margin bottom 1 rem, just to space things away. We save, we refresh, and it spaced everything else out, but why not this one right here? Why not the drop-down box? Well, mainly because the drop-down box is not an input. It is a select field. By specifying select, we now include that in our listing as well. The comment box does not need a bottom margin because there are no more fields under it. Each line now in the form now has more vertical space. Now that the fields and labels are styled, we can remove the temporary border. We save, we refresh. Now the form is a little easier to work with. Almost all the forms are nicely aligned. However, the labels are difficult to read because they are not left aligned. Additionally, the radio buttons are not aligned with the rest of the fields, which means that keeping the labels in line works best for short forms, but not for longer ones like this. It is not the most usable layout. Stacking the labels vertically on top of the fields would be more usable in this case. So we're going to work on aligning these items vertically instead. So return to brackets and delete the first 3 rules after the form's comment. Only the input and select rules should remain. Well, goodbye all of this. Okay, new rules. Return to brackets, click after the closing brace, so we're going to modify it from here on. We're going to say label, display, block. Okay, what does that do? Well, whoa! The labels are now stacked on top of their respective fields. Unfortunately, this also affected the radio buttons right here. Not exactly the best thing, so the radio buttons should remain in line. Why we had to delete that and then put this back, I don't know. Type radio plus label, display in line, and margin right 1 rem. Good. So we save, we refresh, and now the labels next to the radio buttons are now in line, basically doing the exact same thing they did before. Let's see, the radio button labels display horizontally next to the radio buttons again and have appropriate white space between them. Aligning form fields and labels can be tedious and involve a lot of trial and error. It is helpful if you design your site first in a program like Photoshop or Wireframe Designers so that you know exactly how it's supposed to look before you start coding. That way you don't have to worry about all this extra small tweaking to make it work. Alright, next is stylizing the required fields. So after the radio button labels, we're going to put in input using a pseudo class required and say background color hashtag F7DDE1. Let's save, let's refresh, and now we see that all the required fields now have a background of red, which makes it a little easier to work with. But keep in mind that because it's an input, the radio buttons, even though they are inputs, technically don't have a background color, and the text area down here doesn't as well because that's not an input. Let's see. It is not possible to apply a background color to radio buttons or checkboxes with CSS. You may with JavaScript, but for what we're doing, it's not possible. Next, we're going to stylize valid fields. So we're going to say input valid and background color B6F2B6. We save, we refresh. And, well, now the only valid item is the submit button. The send button at the bottom of the page has a green background because it's an input field with a valid value. It's not required, so it wasn't light pink. You will remove the green background from the button later in this activity. Now, as soon as you type a valid value in the approximate weight for number, such as 1, you notice that the background turns green, which is great. But we also want to make this work with pretty much anything, regardless of how the actual fields are labeled out. So one thing we can do, aside from closing the brace, is add the specificity so that the information will be overwritten regardless of what's in it. So we say 1, or I'm sorry, not table, my bad, form, there we go. So we say 1, it changes to green. We say M, it doesn't work. We say hello world, and it doesn't quite work because E is technically a numerical value, but it's not within our minimum and maximum. Let's see, what is the maximum? Can we check? Contact page. There is no maximum. Good. So if we say -2, that is not valid, because a pet with -2 weight is not a healthy pet at all. We say 0, it is not valid because the minimum is 1. We say 1, that is valid, and the box turns green for us. Good. So all 3 fields are of pet's name, owner's name, and phone have text, so anything you type in it technically is classified as valid. Click the email address field and start typing in an email address. Well, it's not going to turn green until you put the @ sign and then something after it. So no matter what you put in, 1, 2, 3, @1 perfectly works. Take away the 1, you get a red box. 2 works, 3 works, anything else works as long as it modifies, or as long as it is a valid input based on the requirements for the input type. Now, if you forget a period, because .com is a valid email, but just the period by itself is not a valid address. So therefore, it's saying it's invalid. Let's see. All right, next we're going to specify the checked elements. So we're going to go to brackets, we're going to go to the CSS, going to go down here, going to say input checked plus label, because we're specifying the sibling label inside of a checked element. Color 006400, modifying specifically the G item of the RGB spectrum. We save, we refresh. Visually there is no difference, but as soon as you check an item in the radio button, you notice the text changes, and it changes based on what is checked. That's a nice little feature of CSS, automatically changing the text color of whatever we selected. If you want to, you could say background color, and you could say color equals white to make it a little more visual for at least this example, and specify color correctly. So this way you can actually see what is selected versus just a modification of the text. Little overkill, let's go back to color. Let's see, when a radio button is clicked or checked, you can see the text has now changed green. If you can't see the green on the computer screen, edit the row to a different color. You can also make the label bold. That will add width to it and cause the other radio button and label to shift sideways a little. This kind of horizontal movement is distracting for users and can break your layout if there are several radio buttons in the same line and is frowned upon in the web design world. Let me show you what I mean. If we say font weight bold, save, refresh, and no matter what you check, the item will be bold. Well, that's neat for one or two items, but if you pay close attention, you see this radio button right here? Once I click on landline, this radio button will shift over to the left because this text right here is no longer bold. Same thing with this. As soon as this text is bold, this button moves to the right. So if I refresh and remove it, you see that both items are the same, but as soon as I click mobile, the landline button moves right a little bit. This is especially annoying when you're dealing with items in the navigation that increase or decrease in size when you're hovering or clicking them. Okay, let's get rid of that. So next thing we're going to do is finalize the form styling by fixing this input button right here. What we're going to do is we're actually going to say input valid, which is correct from our previous item up here, but we're also going to specify not by using a pseudo class. Just keep following me here. We're going to say parentheses, square brackets, type equals submit, quotes, square bracket, parentheses, curly brace, gug, so much work. Background color, hashtag B6, F2, B6. So before we save and refresh, let's just break this down a bit. We have an input, type equals submit, which basically means this right here. We're also going to say input is valid, which copies this right here. And input valid not a type of submit. So basically, anything that is valid that is not the submit button is going to be changed. So let's take a look. Save, refresh, and well, are we modifying this little thing right here? Well, yes, but if you take a look at any of these items right here and try to type in an email address, hello@me.com, well, that didn't quite work. Hold on a second. Input valid not type submit. The submit button no longer has a green background because it's excluded from the rule. The selector resist all input elements with valid content except any elements with type submit. My bad. Okay, we weren't even supposed to add or replace it. We were just supposed to modify it. So this right here, we're going to say, we're just going to move this. Take all that, delete that. There we go. That makes more sense. Delete this line. Save, refresh, and the submit button works quite well. If we say hello@me.com, that automatically changes the background color, which is what it was, and the input button is not selected. So input, type equals submit. We are saying valid for validation, and not the submit button. So anything that is valid, that is an input, that is not the submit button, will change the background color to green. Okay, what else we got? One more. So we're going to modify the text area. Go down here, text area, not comment box or anything, just using text area. Height, 6 rem, and width of 20 rem. Save changes, refresh, and now the comment box or text area now has a lot of space that we can write stuff in it, which is very nice. So the comment box is larger, we can actually see what we're writing in. Good. The last thing that we're going to do is modify the field set. So click at the end of the forms comment. Forms comment. right here, we're going to be modifying the field set because that comes first before the inputs. First things first, border, hashtag 2C77CD, solid, and 2px. Border radius of 10 pixels. Let's save. Let's take a look. Okay, nice and blue and round. Good, good. Margin bottom 2 rem. And padding of 1 rem and 2 rem. So 1 rem does the top and bottom, 2 rem does the left and the right. Save, refresh, and now we have more spacing inside the forms. And the send button is now pushed to the bottom. Inside the field set, we have legends. So let's modify the legends as well. Border, hashtag 2C77CD, matching the background of the field set. Good. Solid 1px. Border radius of 5 pixels. Let's save, let's refresh. Now we see that the legends have the same border and have the same border radius. Color of the same color, 2C77CD. Font weight of bold and padding of 0.25 rem. We save, we refresh, and now the legends have the same color and have more padding around the item, around the field set themselves. Alright, so the legends at the top of each field set display around the border colored bold text and a little padding. You can feel free to experiment with setting the borders, paddings, and font or text properties of the inputs, selects, and text area elements. Because we are not stylizing the input send field. If you want to type in some information and try it out, you can certainly change this. 29, let's just say pounds. Name of Sam Jones, owner, or I'm sorry, Hopper, Sam Jones, mobile, email is me@me.com, and special request, he doesn't like carrots. You can send this off and you get a nice form return field saying exactly the information you put in. So feel free to explore this, change things around, try things out, modify what you would like, and, well, get the assignments done. That is it for Chapter 14, so hopefully you learned a lot with this. Again, go through, experiment, see what you can do, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or hit me up on Twitter. I'll get back to you with the best possible answer. With the next series of videos, we're dealing with positioning, floating, and flexbox of elements. Yay!